Hello, hello. Hey, everyone. Our guest today is a true Renaissance man. As an Army Airborne Ranger, he spent time as an artillery officer near the DMZ on the Korean Peninsula, and he shifted his sights toward both public investing and angel investing while prepping to summit Mount Rainier. Give it up for my friend, Dan Kanivas.
My name is Brian Schoenborn. I'm an explorer of people, places, and culture. In my travels, spanning over 20 countries across 4 continents, I've had the pleasure of engaging in authentic conversations with amazingly interesting people. These are their stories, on location and unfiltered. Presented by 8B Media, this is Half the City.
So what's up, Dan? Thanks for coming out. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me on the show, Brian. It's great to be here.
Awesome. You know, I've always had a respect for airborne rangers, right? Stuff like that. You know, you're watching the movies, the 101st Airborne, dropping down from the skies on like D-Day or whatever else. You know, Hollywood's done a really good job kind of, I don't want to say romanticizing, but like maybe, telling their story anyways, right?
Right.
And when you told me the other day that you've done both airborne school and ranger school, I was like, wow, this guy is legit. And you never would guess because he's one of the most calm, cool, and collected dudes I think that I know anyways.
I appreciate that.
Nice. So why don't you tell me a little bit about like, how you made that decision to join the Army, how you made the decision to, move towards airborne school, ranger school. I'd love to hear about, the challenges of each.
Yeah.
And, that sort of thing.
Yeah. All right. So let's start. That's a multi-part question. So
yes.
let's start with the decision to join the military. So I grew up in Scarsdale, New York, which is a really nice suburban community in the suburbs of New York. I was very lucky, as were other members of that community, to have the resources, whether it's great schools, safe neighborhood, very great public services, et cetera, caring community where children were put first and students were put first. And so as a result, we had every opportunity available to us. And I was very grateful for that. And I felt like a system and a country that could produce something like that was worth defending. I wanted to give back and show my gratitude for it. There are a lot of ways to give back, whether it's public service, volunteering, whatever it might be. In my case, I'd always had some interest in military history, and I was athletic enough. I said, okay, I wanted to give back by serving. I felt like that was my way where I could show my gratitude and then continue with the rest of my life. Mm-hmm. Luckily for me, that's basically how it worked out. And I did 4.5 years of service and active duty as a field artillery officer in the U.S. Army. And
so for those listening, if for the uninitiated, artillery is what? The big guns, right?
The big guns, that's right.
Like
so,
the cannons and that kind of stuff.
And the rockets,
Nice.
etc. And so I had the privilege of serving there with some fantastic soldiers, fantastic leaders. And I had overall a great time in the military, and there'd be very few things I'd trade it for. For me, my path towards Ranger and Airborne School started with my initial training as an artillery officer. Mm-hmm. So at Fort Sill, Oklahoma, we got the option while we were doing our officer basic course for our artillery. We got the option of trying out for Ranger School. And what that entails is showing up in the morning to do a lot of PT, physical training, mm-hmm. a lot of exercise with the instructors that we had. So I was a lieutenant at the time, and there was a captain who was an instructor who at the artillery school who also happened to be Ranger qualified. So he had gone to Ranger School. This is back in 2005. Mm-hmm. The instructor and instructors, there were multiple of them by the end of it, would lead us through training just to get us familiarized with some basic things that would be required of us at Ranger School, but mainly it was a lot of physical training. And so the first day of the training, maybe half the class showed up. And on purpose, just like they do in other military schools, the instructors to use military terminology, smoke the hell out of you. Right?
They're trying to separate the men from the boys.
They purposely make it difficult in the first day because they want to see who wants to come back the next day.
Really wants it.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I had a pretty big class at officer basics course. And I want to say we had a class of like 120 or 130, somewhere around those lines.
Jeez.
So maybe, I don't know, 60 people showed up the first day.
That was all officers?
It was all officers, all lieutenants.
Wow.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. And then the next day, 30 people showed up. And so the group of people who were training for Ranger School was cut down quickly. And we did this for the whole entire 5 or 6 months that we were there. And I think in the end, we ended up sending somewhere between, I think, 12 to 15 people who made it through that pre-Ranger prep program.
So you're talking like 10%-ish.
Yeah.
I mean, of the original like 120 that showed up for the first, or that signed up for it.
Yeah, maybe 60 people showed up the first day, so maybe 20% of them or so made it through, maybe 25%. And then I think we ended up graduating from Ranger School of those 12 or so people who went. I think we ended up graduating maybe 6, 7, or 8, something like that.
Wow.
I know at least one guy I was friends with couldn't make it through at that time or had to drop out, but then he subsequently went back. And so, good for him. I think he's still in the reserves, actually. But anyways, yeah, that was the process of getting there, of starting it. And in my case, it was never a gigantic goal of mine. Some people were gunning for it and they had to do it. The two leaders in our class who I'm still friends with today, who were, corralling us all and encouraging us all to do this pre-Ranger prep, they were gunning for it. They knew this is what they wanted to do. In my case, I just put one foot in front of the other. And a lot of it's just about not giving up, right?
Yep.
At Ranger School, they call someone who quits they don't say it's you quit because you couldn't handle the technical aspects of it or something like that, or because your muscles were too weak or something. They say you quit because you were an LOM, lack of motivation.
There we go.
Right. And so you put one foot in front of the other, you're not guaranteed to succeed and graduate. Definitely not. Yep. But it is the main part, in my opinion, of being able to graduate from Ranger School, is putting one foot in front of the other.
Yeah, I kind of related to my own experience, right? Like I was a Marine, right? And there's statistics somewhere, like I heard this before I joined, maybe it changed in the last 20 years, but before I joined, I remember seeing or hearing a statistic talking about like 1 in 5 recruits that enter boot camp don't make it.
Right.
And for the Marines, it's one of those things where you'll be able to do the physical stuff. Right. As long as you can pass the minimum physical fitness test, which is like 3 pull-ups, 60 crunches in a second, in a like a 5K in like less than 20 minutes or something. It's not like extreme. Right. As long as you can pass those minimum PFT requirements, it's really more mental than anything.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of military training, military schools are very mental, very psychological. Yeah. And that's intentional. You do leave Ranger School, and this is not a new sentiment that I'm expressing. Other people have expressed this too. You do leave Ranger School, if you pass it, feeling like you're fairly impervious to things that life can throw at you.
Oh, for sure. Same with the Marines.
To put it lightly, right?
You get through there and you're just like, I could do anything.
Exactly.
Superman.
Exactly. Exactly. And so that is the whole intent. That's the whole intent, right? Yep. Of any military school. And so
last thing you want is somebody going into fire potentially with any sort of self-doubt.
Right. And that's
hesitation will kill you.
Right. That's completely the idea. And the military, U.S. military is fantastic at training people to be able to do those sorts of things, to act against their basic instinct of self-preservation and do things that are essential for the survival of the team and the accomplishment of the mission.
Absolutely.
So anyways, that was me at Ranger School, which it took me a little while to get through it. Didn't get through it right away. I wasn't a true blue, just pass every phase the first time go. It took me a little while, but I got through.
And that's perseverance and resilience.
There you go. There you go. That's right.
Says a lot about your character.
There you go. That is one way to look at it. And then for airborne school, a lot of people go to Ranger school already airborne qualified, meaning they've successfully passed airborne school. But in my case, I didn't. I got sent to Ranger school first.
Oh, okay.
But basically, once you pass Ranger school, you're already at Fort Benning when you finish up, which is the home of the infantry and also the home of the airborne school. And they're going to give you, the people who are responsible for processing you, give you orders to airborne school after that, because oftentimes those two things go together.
I got it.
The airborne ranger the missions go together. And they generally have extra slots to give right there at Fort Benning. And so I just got a slot for the next one. And so typically airborne school certainly is an intense school. You're jumping out of airplanes, right? And safety is paramount, and taking care of your buddies, your teammates is paramount. And certainly the instructors there are not kind about any infractions, right?
I'm sure.
But given the experience I had just previously gone through with Ranger School, airborne school was relatively easy. And so I used it as mainly a 3-week vacation.
so you cut your teeth with Ranger School and like, yeah, I'm good. I'll just breeze right through here. Chill on the beach.
Yeah. I wouldn't have felt that way had I not just been through that experience, but because I had, it felt that way to me. It's all about relative intensity.
And you see these guys struggling and you're like, psh.
Yeah, I wouldn't go that far. I was still out there in the Georgia heat in June, but yeah.
I mean, all due respect to everybody,
yes,
of course.
Yes,
Everyone's got their own.
Of course,
it's all relative, like you said.
That's right. It's all relative. It just happened to be that I was coming out of.
It was a different situation.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. So, and that was my training in the military. It took a year for me to get through 6 months of my artillery school and then Ranger school and airborne school, and there's some kind of downtime in between all these things. And so, I spent a year in training, and then they sent me off to my first actual duty station, which was Korea, where I had, again, the privilege of serving for 2 years.
So this was near the DMZ, right?
Yes. So at the time, I'm not sure where everyone's stationed now, but at the time I was stationed north of Seoul, but not quite at the DMZ, at 2 different bases, Camp Red Cloud and Camp Casey, who my dog's named after, by the way.
Oh, cool.
And at those 2 duty stations, I served with the 2nd Infantry Division the whole time, but specifically the artillery unit that I was with at Camp Casey was 138 Field Artillery, which has rocket launchers, MLRS, multiple launch rocket system, rocket launchers as its primary weapon system.
Where just trying to get an understanding of like where about you. I mean, you said you're near the DMZ, but like, can you maybe show me on a map? Just
sure. So,
audience listening at home, you just got to visualize it.
Yeah, if you pull up Google Maps and zoom in on Seoul, which is towards the northwest of South Korea.
Korea. Looking at it, it's. I mean, I've been to Seoul, but it's literally like what, 20 miles or something.
Yeah, from the border.
From the border,
and Seoul is well within artillery range of the North Korean artillery that's near the border. And as a result, that means all the American troops and ROK, Republic of Korea troops, who are north of Seoul, are also within artillery range of the North Korean guns. And so,
and that's what, the 49th parallel.
I think so. Yeah,
49 or 47, something.
I think so. Yeah. And so you see this Uijeongbu right here.
Yep.
That is where Camp Red Cloud is located. And so I was stationed there for a little bit. And then further north in Tongducheon, there is where Camp Casey is located, where I was stationed for my 2nd year.
Huh.
Yeah.
No, so that's literally, I mean, that looks like probably not more than like 20 miles.
Yeah, it's pretty short. It's not a lot of distance. And while you're stationed in Korea, you also have the opportunity to do the JSA tour. If you saw the JSA stands for Joint Security Area. If you saw the news footage about Donald Trump crossing into North Korea,
I mean that was just recent,
that's exactly where you do it. And so you can, as a U.S. service member, go and visit there and take a tour. And the U.S. service members and Korean service members who are there, both maintaining the area and protecting the area, will take you on a tour of the area.
So do they allow you to cross the border there?
Technically, I've crossed into North Korea, technically, yeah.
Wow.
What they do is there's these buildings, which again you can see in the footage with Donald Trump. There are these buildings where the negotiations between the two sides have historically happened. These buildings are bisected by the border, by the actual border.
So like, is there like a demarcation line or something like that?
Yeah, there is. If you look at any pictures of
Yep.
it, you can see there's a line. And so on the tour, what they'll do is they'll take you on the tour, and they'll go. One of the Korean guards will go and check the building and go lock the far side door that's in North Korean territory, and then you go inside the building. And when you're inside the building, you can see all around the building and technically cross into North Korea.
You know, it's interesting because I've heard so many stories of like, you know, North Koreans trying to defect and crossing the border and like, you know, getting shot or something like that.
Right.
So like, you know, so everything that I've heard throughout the years is like the DMZ, like that line, that border is like the most dangerous border in the world because the war's never officially ended.
Right. It's still under an armistice. And so it is it's a heavily guarded border. You wouldn't cross there at the JSA because there's a lot of attention there at that location.
Right.
But I imagine there are other points along the border where the defenses are softer and it's less monitored at any given time. Also, defectors go through China as well, or Russia.
Yep.
Because both of those countries border North Korea.
Well, I've heard there's actually a whole like almost like an underground railroad, to use like an American historical reference. Yeah. But there's, you know, I heard there's like this whole network of people that like help get people through the northern border, through China, and then down to like Southeast Asia or something like that, and then make their way back to the south.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's exactly how that underground railroad works. Yeah.
In essence, right? Pretty much the same thing.
Yep.
I wonder, like, so you cross over the border,
right?
And I mean, how do I say this? So what was the experience like? I mean, you said heavily guarded. Is it also like, you know, let me put it this way. When I was living in China, all right, I was in Beijing. I've got a lot of friends that have visited North Korea.
Right.
Americans, English, other expats.
Right.
Americans can only fly in.
Okay.
For example.
Okay.
English
they can't drive in through the Chinese border.
They can't take the train through the Chinese border. Right. I forget the name of the city, Dongdan or something like that. Okay. But if you're English, you can take the train in.
Okay. Yeah.
If you're American, you have to fly in. And from what I understand, like it's the most eye-opening, like surreal experience
that's what everyone
that they've
says.
ever had.
Right.
You know, like it's one of those things where you can only go with a tour group.
Yep.
And you do absolutely everything.
Yes.
That they tell you to do. You don't do anything outside of that.
Right.
I've got some friends that ran the Pyongyang Marathon.
Oh wow.
Right, which they've done every year for the last 5 years at least.
Okay.
Something like that.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where the North Koreans run first.
Okay.
So that way
they win.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
North Koreans get like a head start.
Yeah.
But I've got friends that have done that, and I've actually got a friend. I think he's still in Beijing, but he owns and operates this tour group in North Korea.
Yeah.
In fact, he actually he was the tour group operator that was heading this group in which Otto Warmbier was arrested and
for potentially doing.
Apparently, what happened is he tried to steal a poster or something.
Right.
Like a propaganda poster.
Right.
We don't need to get into all of that, but like it's just kind of a like I know some people that have significant experience in North Korea.
Gotcha. Yeah.
That's the point that I'm making. So when I hear that it's like a surreal experience, you know, just kind of curious if you've had anything similar like that in your experience crossing the border, even though it may have been limited since you're in this building.
No, I did not have any experiences like that. I think most people who have that JSA Joint Security Area experience is going to be very similar to mine.
Yeah.
It's very scripted.
Oh, for
sure. And it's
sure.
designed to be that way.
Yep.
It's still a singular experience, a unique experience, because there's not too many other places in the world where the exact right. There may be not. There may not be, right? But it's not anything like actually going to Pyongyang and running a marathon there.
Sure.
I can't imagine what that's like.
Well, but even something like that, like from what I've heard, like as soon as you land or arrive in North Korea, the police or the guards or whatever, they'll take your phone and they'll go through all your photos
Yeah, I'm sure.
and make sure that there's nothing that's like wouldn't be in aligned with the North Korea's values.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And I guess they check your footage, your cameras, and all that stuff as you're leaving.
Yeah.
Make sure you're not, make sure like there's apparently there's only one way you can take pictures of the dear leaders,
Okay.
right? Things like that. So
Okay.
if you're like even veering off from that a little bit,
Yeah.
like you're screwed.
Yeah. This is not a level of risk that I would be comfortable taking, but more power to the people who want that sort of adventure in their lives.
You know what's funny is a couple of my friends were like, "Yo, like, let's do the Pyongyang marathon," and I'm like, "Oh, this sounds sweet. Like, let's do it. Like, I'll fall in line and do absolutely everything. Like, not color out of the lines at all.
Sure.
Right?" And I put a message on Facebook. I was like, "Yeah, I think I'm gonna go to North Korea." And my mom and my older sister were freaking out.
Yeah,
dude.
sure. Yeah.
They were like, "Oh my God, Brian, you've done some you've done some crazy things in your life, but please don't do this."
Right.
Like,
Right.
I'm like,
right.
so
Right.
I buckled and I didn't go.
Yeah.
So what do you think? You're kind of bringing back to this DMZs thing. You mentioned, Donald Trump stepped over.
Yep.
What do you kind of make of all of that? Like, just out of curiosity.
I don't have much of an opinion on it. I'm not a Trump supporter.
Yeah. Well,
And
not trying to get too political by any
Right.
means, but it is a historical moment.
Yeah, I don't know how much intention was behind it. I
Probably more
don't
show than
know
anything.
generally what his strategy or lack thereof is with North Korea.
Yeah.
All I know is I'm not a Trump supporter in
Yeah.
any way, shape, or form.
Yeah. No, I mean, same here.
Yeah.
Same here.
Right.
I feel like he ramped up this crisis unnecessarily, in my opinion.
Sure.
Now he's going to try to find a way to put it back the way it was before.
Yeah.
And like claim the victory.
Sure.
Like he's done with so many other things.
Sure,
Right.
sure,
Like,
sure.
Jesus, dude. All right. Anyways, we can move on from that. What other stuff did you do as an arty officer? Like were you other places as well, or so you mentioned you were there for like 2 years?
Yes.
How long were you in the service overall?
So 4.5 years in active duty. So I mentioned 1 year in training, 2
Yep.
years in Korea, where most of the time, not the whole time, I was actually doing an artillery job. I was also a general's aide for a little bit.
Oh, cool.
And then after that, I got orders to go to Iraq on a military transition team. And what those
What is that?
what those teams are, MIT teams for short, and acronyms for everything in the military, of
Yep.
course. On the MIT team, we were responsible for training Iraqi security forces, be they army, be they police, so that we could eventually pull out and they
Right.
could be self-sufficient. And so this was back in 2008. I got the orders in 2007, but I deployed in 2008 after some training at Fort Riley, Kansas. And go ahead. You have a question?
Yeah, well, I'm just thinking like 2008. Where were we with the Iraq and Afghanistan conflicts? Was that during like the counterinsurgency plan, or
Yes, it was. It was during the surge. And so the unit I relieved, the MIT team that I relieved, was just coming down off the surge. They'd been there for the surge, and I was relieving them. And so, luckily, and I think history will show this to be true, it certainly felt that way to me over there. The surge worked. It worked. The additional deployment of troops, and also, more importantly, the deployment of a strategy to solve the root problem help solve the root problem, attack the root problem of what was going on in Iraq at the time, which was that there were a lot of unemployed, underemployed, especially males, young and otherwise,
desperation,
right, who couldn't feed their families
Yeah.
because previously they had a source of patronage that the U.S. took away.
Mm-hmm.
The U.S. restored a lot of that patronage, hired the Sons of Iraq and things like that to pay them essentially to not attack not just us, but also their fellow countrymen and provide some light security duties. And that, in conjunction with additional U.S. troop deployment, actually did the trick. And so when I got to Iraq in 2008, I spent the year in 2008, 2009 doing training for 2 different Iraqi Army units. One didn't really need us anymore. The mission was essentially considered more or less accomplished. They were trained. And so we spent about 6 months with them before I was sent up further up in the Northeast to a brand new unit in Kirkuk. And this is where most of my experience there, it's more vivid there, where we were trying to help stand up a brand new unit and try to help them do simple things like get concertina wire to string around their perimeter.
What is concertina wire?
So it is barbed wire, the military's version of barbed wire.
It's like the spirally.
Yeah, the spiral with the barbs on it.
Yep.
And it's much more intense it's what you'd see above a prison, a chain link fence in a prison, right? So more intense than you'd see perhaps in a pasture. So getting concertina wire to put around the perimeter, getting their soldiers to get the proper uniforms, getting their soldiers to learn how to put on the proper uniforms, things like that.
Essentially setting them up for success so they can be self-sustaining.
Right. So basic things like that. I'll say a few things about this. The Iraqi officers that we worked with, who almost by definition to the last man had served under Saddam, almost by definition, not everybody, but almost all of them, because in order to be that senior, have that experience, they had to have served under Saddam. They were very professional in general. Some of them, had less experience and they were more political appointees, so were perhaps less professional that way. But most of them were very professional. They generally knew what they were doing under their own system. But like all bureaucracies, they never could get all the supplies they needed. They could never get all the ammo they needed, the training they needed, the manpower, the money.
Basically, various extremely important choke points, bottlenecks.
Exactly. So we made do with what we had. Luckily, again, at the time, the surge, I was beneficiary of the surge having worked out pretty well. So my time in Iraq generally was pretty peaceful, generally.
Let me ask you, kind of in general about the Iraqi people.
Yes.
Right. So like I didn't go. Right. I was medically discharged, or whatever. You can listen to Relentless and hear that whole story. But I was discharged 1 week before my unit went to Iraq.
Right.
Post 9/11.
Right.
My unit was the first to go to Iraq. They fought in Fallujah.
Yeah.
Right. It was fucking crazy.
Yeah.
But I never got the opportunity to. I was never there.
Yeah.
Right. Put it that way. I'm just wondering, like you hear on the news all the time about like the terrorists and like, which ties in with like anti-Muslim sentiment and stuff like that. I'm just curious, like, you spent what, a year and a half over there or something like that?
A year.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you spent a year over there, and you worked with some of these generals and high-ranking officers. I imagine you probably interacted with some of the people, like the everyday civilians as well. A little bit, or no?
Not as much. Okay. Sometimes we did, but not too much.
Okay.
My job wasn't that. I wasn't on patrols trying to learn about what was going on at the village chief's house or something like that.
Yeah. Well, I guess, I'm not necessarily saying that. I'm kind of thinking more like, what was your general impression of like the culture and like the people like at their core?
Right.
Even if they were some of Saddam Hussein's henchmen or whatever you want to call them, right hands. I'm just kind of curious, like what the overall feeling.
I suspect that it would be the overall feeling that you would have in a lot of other countries that are foreign to you.
Sure.
So people will keep to themselves if they don't have any particular business to be dealing with you. I was rolling around in heavily armored vehicles with machine guns.
So you stood out a little bit.
Yeah, right. So, but that said, I can't remember a single instance where I did interact with people and folks were angry at me or there was a mob yelling at me or something like that. That never happened. I remember one time we broke down in the middle of a small village, small town that was along the roads, the road that we often traveled past through. And we broke down, so we had to perform recovery operations to get our vehicle moving again. We essentially towed one of them back to the base. No one gathered around us and started anything. They just left us alone. And I think generally that is the attitude that most people would take, because there's not a lot of advantage, I think, to be gained by interacting with heavily armed people, unless you're trying to harm them or otherwise have a mission related to that. People just want to be left in peace. They want to take care of their families, right?
Yeah.
And they want the same things for their families that we would want for ours.
You know, it's curious that you mentioned that, you know, with your experience during wartime,
Right.
You know, like I'm always curious about this stuff because in my travels, you know, like I traveled through Vietnam, for example. I spent 3 weeks backpacking Vietnam.
Yeah.
I lived in China for over 3.5 years.
Right.
Right. And one of the things that surprised me most about Vietnam was how friendly, how genuine the people were, and how much they love Americans.
Right.
Or just people in general, you know, they're just very warm, welcoming people.
Right.
And then like in China, I remember when I first came back home, like 6 months after staying in China, I ran across this lady that I grew up with in church or whatever. And she goes, Brian, what are you doing? I go, oh yeah, I'm living in China, whatever. And she goes, China? China? Brian, what are you doing there? I'm so scared. China's communist. Like, are you okay?
Right.
And I go, I fucking love it there.
Yeah.
You know, like the government's, yes, CCP, all that stuff, right? Authoritarian, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
But most people don't really pay attention to it.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. And most people in general are very welcoming.
Right.
You know?
Right.
They want to share their culture with you.
Yes.
Right? They want to share their food. And they want to drink with you.
Yes.
China is a heavily smoking country. They want you to try their regional cigarettes.
Yeah, right.
You know, like that's why I smoke again. It's ridiculous. But, you know, like this very warm, welcoming people.
Right.
And, you know, essentially what it sounds like you're telling me is like, even, you know, placed in Iraq, even with all the propaganda that we receive, right? That people pretty much anywhere you go, whether it's an enemy or whether it's a country that we've fought before, or whether it's a people that we're fighting at that moment. Yeah. You know, people are essentially people. They all want the same stuff.
Yes.
Right? They want to be able to provide for their family.
Right.
Right? They want to live in a safe environment.
Yes.
And they want to, you know, and they want to have a small little group of family and friends, like people, and be successful, right? Like people want to have some sort of value, right?
Yes, absolutely. 100%. I think it's human nature.
Yeah.
Cultures affect the expression of that, but ultimately that's human nature and it's going to be universal.
Yeah.
I, again, didn't have the good fortune of interacting as much with the average Iraqi while I was over there because my mission just didn't take me there.
Right.
But the Iraqis I did interact with, whether they were military, there were soldiers that I was serving with, advising, or otherwise helping, or our interpreters who were with us. I generally had a good experience with them.
Yeah.
And I have, you know, nothing negative to say about that interaction.
And I think that's really, I think that's poignant because, you know, when you're fighting when you're at war with another side, it's easy for all that stuff to get lost.
Sure, yeah.
Because whichever side you're on, you know, they're propagating to turn this group of people into an enemy or whatever, and like dehumanize them.
Sure, yeah.
You know, and you know, you may have disagreements on like fundamental beliefs, but at the core, we're all the fucking same.
Yeah, and part of my mission was to do the exact opposite, to not dehumanize, but understand that we were fighting the same fight on the same side. Most people, anyways, and that we had shared interests and shared values. They gave us, the military gave us a fair amount of cultural training before we went. Nice. I can, not today, but at the time, I tried to conduct as much of my conversations with my counterparts, my Iraqi counterparts, in Arabic as possible. I always had an interpreter with me. Obviously, I don't speak Arabic, but I tried to pick up phrases here and there that would be helpful.
And that goes a long way too, right?
Oh yeah, it goes a long way. It goes
I tell you, like
way.
when I was in China, like
Way.
I took one lesson,
Yeah.
but everything else I picked up.
Yeah.
You know, emergency Chinese, survival Chinese, that sort of thing. But even if I could just say hello in Chinese, they're like, "Oh my god, like you get us," right? Basically,
Yeah.
and it goes a long way, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's pretty interesting. I think that's pretty interesting. But I do want to move on to some other stuff.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. Let's do it.
You know, we could talk about that and get into as deep as we want about that as long as humanly possible. But I think the biggest point for me on that is you've done some pretty interesting shit, and people are people.
Yep.
You know.
Yep. 100%.
And I think that needs to be made more known.
Yeah.
When you've got people like our current president threatening to wipe Afghanistan off the face of the map.
I did not catch him say that, but if he did say that, that's very wrong.
He said it. So he was meeting with the leader of Pakistan. I think his name is Mohammed Sharaf or something.
Okay.
I forget his name exactly,
Okay.
but they were in the White House or Oval Office with the camera opportunity.
Yeah.
Like he's been doing where he's got this leader, but he's really just talking about his own stupid agenda.
Of course.
Right. And someone asked him about Afghanistan.
Yeah.
Essentially, he goes, "Look, I have all sorts of options with Afghanistan. If I want to, I could wipe Afghanistan off the face of the map." He's like, "I don't want to kill 10 million people.
Yeah.
But if I had to, I could do it."
Awful. Just.
And so Afghanistan
awful.
comes back and they're like, "Fuck you, dude. How could you possibly say that?"
Yeah.
And everybody else too. Like, seriously.
It's
you know, it's called soft power.
Incredibly
right?
bad.
Like, obviously,
Incredibly
we can
bad.
do that, but you don't talk about it.
incredibly bad. But that's unfortunately par for the course here.
I know. It's not fair. Why?
You know, the scary thing too is that there's a lot of writing, articles, etc., from news sources that are typically considered liberal that are saying that as of right now, polls show that Trump will probably win re-election, which is just scary to think about.
Well, I think right now, again, without getting too political or topical, but I think right now the Democratic field is so big that it's hard for that base to really consolidate around one person.
Right.
You know?
Right.
I think
I agree with you.
Yeah. So I think as various candidates drop off, you know, that will consolidate itself a little bit more.
Yep.
And you know, hopefully that madman is dethroned.
Well, I thoroughly hope so.
You know, because I think he's setting us back a long way.
Yes.
But you know, we'll have to wait and see. You know, like last cycle, or last presidential cycle.
Mm-hmm.
You know, everyone thought that Hillary was going to kill it.
Yeah. Right. Oh, I remember where I was that night on election night 2016. I remember exactly what it was like and what it felt like and the depths of the depression that we all went through then. So yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I remember I was sitting in Beijing watching this thing going, I'm not coming back for the next 4 years, maybe 8, God forbid.
Yeah, contrast that with how I felt. I was in Iraq in November 2008. And I remember being in the dining facility at the time. We got news that Obama had won. And wow, the feeling of excitement then was great. Yeah.
You know what's weird is like, I was a registered Republican for like 10 years.
Right.
I was always like fiscally conservative, socially liberal kind of guy.
Right.
Not that any of this matters, but I voted for Romney and McCain.
Sure.
Right. So I didn't vote for Obama either time.
Okay.
But I've since dropped my affiliation. But I also believe that Barack Obama is probably the best president we've had in our generation.
Yeah.
I think hands down.
I agree with that.
I mean, you know, there's positives and negatives that you can say about anybody, but that's kind of how I feel.
Yep.
So I want to move on, like move out of the military stuff a little bit, because I know you're up to some really cool stuff as well. I mean, you've managed to maintain your physical endurance activities, that kind of stuff?
Trying to, yeah.
I know you mentioned something about Mount Rainier. Can you tell me like what you're planning to do and like how this whole thing came about?
Yeah, sure. So last year, one of my friends texts me and says, "Hey Dan, do you want to climb Mount Rainier?" And I said, "Okay, I'm interested. What does that entail?" And he's like, "Well, we can go with guides and they'll take us through it. It's a 4-day program and it would be next August, but you have to decide now. And you have to decide like right now, basically today." And I said, "Okay, let me go ask my wife." And so I said, she said, "Sure, like that sounds good." And I said, "Okay, all right, I'm in." I had no idea what it entailed. I had zero idea what it entailed. So my friend who asked me to do this was my friend from the Army who was in Korea. He just recently got out of the Army, so he's in much better shape than I am. I've been out for almost 10 years now at this point. But we've been training for trying to summit Mount Rainier next month. So actually tomorrow we are headed out to Mount St. Helens
cool.
again for the second time this season.
Nice.
To do our last big training hike before Rainier when we attempt that. And so that is something I'm definitely looking forward to. Come, one way or the other, it's all gonna culminate here in a few weeks. I'm looking forward to that. Of course, I hope I'm successful.
Yep.
Of course, I hope the weather cooperates and I have the endurance and the fitness and the ability to make the summit and all that stuff. But ultimately, I'm looking just to the general experience.
Nice. Well, so let me clarify for our listeners right now. So we're currently in the city of Seattle.
Yes.
Right. So Mount St. Helens and Mount Rainier, those are two of the those are the biggest peaks, right?
Rainier is the tallest one here in the state of Washington. St. Helens, I don't know where it ranks, but it's up there.
It's up there, right?
It's up there, yeah.
Like how and they're not far. They're like hour, 2 or 3, something like that.
You can drive north south to the state of Washington, comfortably within hours. Not 2 hours, but yeah, they're all within driving distance of Seattle. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So they're close by, but they're like huge, right?
Yes.
You can see them on the horizon in Seattle.
Yeah.
Or at least Rainier.
Yeah, you can see Rainier. Yeah.
Do you have an idea like how tall these are, like their peaks or whatever?
Yeah, I don't know St. Helens off the top of my head.
Is it like a 10 or like a 10,000 foot ish?
I want to say it's like 8 or 9, something like that. But Rainier is over 14,000. Yeah, so it's definitely tall. It's some serious altitude. When you do it, I've been told, I haven't done it yet, that you do feel the effects of altitude sickness and things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's definitely going to be a challenge.
Mm-hmm. So Mount St. Helens is a pretty good prepper.
Yeah, I think it's definitely on the training plan for a lot of folks. And Mount St. Helens, because it is popular for people to hike and climb, you have to get permits during the season in order to be able to hike it. So I'm going with some other friends, same group of people who I'm training for Mount Rainier, plus we're adding on a few more to do Mount St. Helens again in 2 days.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
2 days.
2 days. Yeah. So Saturday. So
Nice.
what we do is we'll take off tomorrow afternoon from Seattle, head down there, bed down for a little bit, and then Alpine start 2 a.m., something like that, so that we can start headed up to the top of St. Helens while it's still dark out, still cool out. And then if we're lucky, depending on the conditions, we might get to glissade down St. Helens. So
what is that?
yes, this is the funnest part of and the payoff for climbing. So you get to the top and there's snow. And what people have done rather than walk back down is you ride the snow back down.
Oh, dude, that sounds so awesome.
Yeah, so that I'm excited for, and hopefully that will happen. That's what we did last time, but we also went in May when I suspect there was a lot more snow. This time there should still be plenty of snow to glissade down, but I don't actually know.
How are you sliding down on this? Are you like snowboards, toboggans, just like the little like $5 plastic sleds, like the saucer sleds? What do you what's going on there?
All of the above. Some people bring their snowboards, some people bring their skis.
Awesome.
You can just do it in hard shell pants. You can even take, and this is what I did last time, you could take a trash bag and just ride down on a trash bag.
Yeah, that's sweet.
It works. And it's sure as hell beats walking down.
I bet.
You don't want to walk anymore after you reach the top. So, yeah, glissading down is pretty fantastic.
Nice. That reminds me of, I'm doing these Nicaragua stories right now. That reminds me of this time I summited it was a short volcano.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right. But it was an active volcano.
Yes.
One of the world's youngest volcanoes.
Okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The gas,
So
the
millions
gas
and millions of years
old,
old, but one of the world's youngest.
Well, no, it's only like 150.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, it actually sprung up out of a cornfield in like the 1800s.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
150 years old, not
Yeah.
150,000.
No,
150 years
like
old.
150 years old.
Wow.
It's
Okay.
like and apparently
Oh,
it
that's
blows
really young.
up. It blows like every 15 years or something like that.
Oh, okay.
And when I was there, it was around 15 years. I don't know if it didn't blow up when I was there, but it was definitely active.
Sure.
You know,
Sure.
at the summit,
gases and
at the summit, you could see the crater.
Yeah.
And there you could see gases coming up out
Yeah.
of the ground.
Yeah.
So we went to the top of it,
Yeah.
and we had a fast way down too.
Uh huh.
Yeah, we with the tour group, they gave us this backpack.
Yeah.
And you could choose between a snowboard looking thing.
Yeah.
And like a mini toboggan looking thing.
Yeah. Nice.
And we volcano surfed.
Yeah. Fantastic. Fantastic. Yeah. I like the outdoors a lot.
Yeah.
I
Same, of course.
generally don't say no when people want to do outdoorsy things, but
Yeah.
I almost never wake up and think to myself, I really need to get outdoors today.
Yeah.
I, for better or for worse, live in my head a lot.
Yeah.
I love to read. I love strategy games,
Mm-hmm.
things like that. Right. So I don't feel compelled to go and get outdoors. However, I'm almost never regret it because there's so much fun to be had outdoors, including volcano surfing. So that's
Dude.
awesome.
You know, glissading or volcano surfing or any of that stuff. I mean, where else can you do that? There's only so many volcanoes. It's not like they're everywhere.
yeah.
I mean,
exactly.
they're all over the world,
Yeah.
but they're only in very specific locations.
Yeah, they're very cool experiences. A lot of people I've talked to about, our pending Mount Rainier adventure here are very curious about it because they do realize that, okay, yeah, there's not a lot of other ways to kind of express this sort of desire to experience nature and experience your own backyard, your own environment in a unique, very singular sort of way. And so you just got to go out there and do it, right? And you have, which is fantastic.
Yeah. I'll never forget that trip, dude. That sounds fucking awesome.
Yeah.
I'm super looking forward to hearing about all of it.
Yeah, fingers
We're
crossed
gonna
it
talk
all
later.
goes well. So yeah.
I got a pretty good feeling about it. You mentioned something about strategy stuff. You do strategy games? Can you kind of that kind of caught my attention. Can you dive into that a little bit? Like what kind of games are you into? Like for me and my brothers and my dad, we have a tradition. Every time we go home for the holidays, we play Risk.
Yeah.
And we get super into it.
Yeah, sure.
Like we used to pretty much be out for blood for each other.
Sure, yeah, sure.
I think there might have been some fist fights.
Yeah.
And at one point where my mom was like, she took it away and she banned us from playing Risk for 5 years.
Yeah.
But so I'm just curious, what I hear the strategy stuff and the strategy games, and I'm like, tell me what kind of stuff are you into?
So growing up, definitely, my favorite type of video game, for example, was role-playing games, so RPGs, Final Fantasy, Chrono Trigger, that sort of thing. And if I had more time now, I'd still play them because there's no shortage. There's no shortage of fantastic stories that are told through these media, right? Through these mediums, right? And they get you so invested, and they know how to get you invested. These game designers know how to get you invested. In college, I played a lot of poker, for various reasons, socially, also to try to attempt to win money, mainly lose it. But things like that. It was a large part of my college experience. And also when I was a kid, 12 years old, 11 years old, that sort of time frame. It was around 94, 95, 96. So Magic the Gathering had just come out.
Magic the Gathering.
Yes.
I've heard of that game. I think I'm a little bit older than you.
I was active duty in the Marines from
Yeah.
2000 to 2002. So
Yeah. I was born in 1983. So
about
yeah.
2 years in. I remember, I think I was early in high school. I mean, you said 7th or 8th grade.
Yes.
So that put me in high school, right?
Yeah.
So I remember hearing about Magic the Gathering,
Yeah.
but I was kind of at that point where I don't know. I wasn't there at that point.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You know,
oh, yeah.
like I was in
Oh,
a
yeah.
different spot.
Oh yeah.
But my younger brother, who
Yeah.
was born in 83,
Ah yeah. Mm-hmm.
huge into
Yeah.
Magic the Gathering.
Yep. And
Shout out to Dave.
being born at a certain time or being a certain age
Yeah.
and that time frame made all the difference. If I was
Yeah.
actually if I were actually a year older or 2 years older, it may have worked out that I may have missed it just like you, or I could have gotten in on it even a little sooner. And had I done that, then some of those cards from that era, which I missed by just about a year, are invaluable now.
Really?
They're quite expensive. Yeah, because they've become collector's items.
Those what, like baseball cards or something?
Yeah, that idea. They're not being made anymore. So, anyways, so I played for a little bit back in those days as a middle schooler, and as the nerdy kid who was looking for something that was popular to do at the time, mainly with other boys. This was spoke to me, strategy games and the fantasy portion of it, dragons and demons and angels and stuff like that. That was pretty cool. Like
Nice.
that kept us interested. But life moved in other directions. I got involved in sports, became more active socially, especially with the fairer sex.
Sure, of course.
And so magic disappeared from my life.
So that's where I was at. But I just got a curiosity. Do you recall like playing the game? Like, can you? Because I don't know anything about it.
Yeah.
Like, can you kind of give me like a high level, like the highest of level overview, like how it works?
Yes, sure. So it's a card game that you take a set of cards and you build decks with them. And the idea is that you and your opponent, so it's typically played one-on-one.
One-on-one, okay.
Typically, you and your opponent are both powerful wizards, and you cast spells to try to defeat each other. The game was actually created by a grad student, I believe at UPenn, a mathematics grad student at UPenn, who had a lifelong fascination and love for games. And though his name is Richard Garfield, though he's brilliant, this is going to be his legacy on Earth. So not mathematics or anything else. Most likely it's going to be this game, which has grown to be very, very popular.
I mean, it's a pretty impressive legacy to leave it.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's still active in making games and things like that. But anyways, so that's the basic gist of the game. You use these cards, cast spells to try to defeat each other. And, the game, though I left the game a long time ago, it grew and grew and grew and grew. And in 2018, so last year, one of my friends who I worked with right out of business school, turned out that he has some cards, and I talked to him about it. He's like, "Hey, Dan, did you know there's an online platform for this now that's pretty nifty?"
No way.
Yeah. And,
So like 15 years.
yeah, 20 years.
20, wow.
20 years, yeah.
Yeah.
20 years. Had I not had that conversation, I don't think I would have rediscovered it, but now it's 100% my guilty pleasure to play
Nice.
Magic the Gathering Arena online.
Wow.
And it takes away a lot of the issues of having to play with paper cards. Not that I don't like to play with them, I do. But it's one of these things where you don't have to do it in a room full of other people. You can do it from your bed or from your desk or on a train, right? Just on your laptop. And what I thought I liked before about the game, the fantastical aspects of it, right? The dragons and stuff, actually turned out not to be the exciting part of the game for me. What I like about the game is how deep strategically it goes. It combines the deep strategy of a game like Risk or chess or the Settlers of Catan, things like that, right? Where each choice you make really matters. It combines that with the randomness again, that's involved in Risk or poker, right? Where the top card of your deck that you don't know what it is will change the outcome of the game. And so the combination of those two things, the skill and the luck, the roll of the dice in Risk, keeps people coming back for more because it makes every game you play different, which is really, really cool. And it goes very, very deep. So I am a newly reintegrated.
That's interesting. You know, I've heard some people have been kind of resurging with like Dungeons and Dragons and stuff like that too.
Oh, yeah.
Like I dabbled with it, but I was never really like that into it. Again, that was my brother's sort of thing. But I've heard that a lot of people like kind of our age have been getting back into these things. So it must be interesting to like to play against these people with that new perspective and that level of knowledge and experience that you've gained and thought process and all of that. It's got to be pretty cool. I bet you can get some, like if you were to play, if you had some buddies that like are in the area and they have like a deck of cards, like it's probably pretty cool to have like a dude night, a dude Magic the Gathering, a friend night, I guess. I don't want to like be gender biased or whatever.
For better, for worse, and this is actually a big topic of discussion within the community, not just Magic, but gaming generally, right? And gaming is gigantic; it's exploding. My wife works for a gaming company; like it's everywhere. Yeah, and so, gaming is unfortunately very biased towards males, and as a result, oftentimes there are people in the community slash the companies and the the policies that inadvertently get set up. I don't think it's intentional, at least from the company standpoint, are exclusive, unfortunately, right? And they're not always integrative and not always inclusive,
right? And
so there's actually to Magic's credit, they really do try to be inclusive. You see it in the artwork, you see it in their messaging, you see it in how they treat people who are not inclusive, which is great.
I think that's fantastic. You know, because like I tripped up and said, "Oh, dude, it's a dude thing," but it's really not, and it shouldn't be. Right. You know, it's games. You're having fun. Right. It's strategy. Right. You know, like you're using your mind. You're having a little bit of a social environment. Like that's not.
Yeah, I don't think you tripped up at all. I think this is a real issue, and it's something that the community has to figure out. If you go have a board game night with friends, which, like you said, is kind of, you're seeing a resurgence, people around our age doing this, and I think there's several reasons for it. One, it's if people have families, it's a pretty low key way to get together, and
you're not going crazy. Exactly. You're not getting super wasted playing Magic the Gathering. Right. Maybe a casual beer. Or
we're not going out to Coachella because we have kids, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So, that's a great way to get together. And like, I just played actually last weekend, Settlers of Catan, with some friends I have around here while we were out in Walla Walla on a wine country trip. It was great. It was one of the highlights of the trip. It's always fun playing with them. And so, it's a very enjoyable, easy to get into, and social thing to do. And I think this is why board games are going to be around for a long time. And also in this day and age with the digital stuff that we always have, it's so easy. Just sit there on your phone and be antisocial, right? Yeah. This forces you to be social.
It's kind of nice to go analog once in a while.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. It's really nice. It's really nice to go analog, and the more you do it, the more you're like, wow, I want to do this again. And so I think that there are a lot of social games that, and actually, Brian, you and I and your brother Dave and whoever else wants to do it, we can do this together. There are a lot of social games where there are spaces, especially here in the Seattle area, that are welcoming and really, really conducive to doing that. Like, nice. There's one store I'm thinking about in particular. They have a spot in Seattle, also out in Bellevue, closer to where I live, called Mock's Boarding House, and they have a full-on restaurant, tons of beer on tap, large tables you play games in. Yeah. It's basically Mecca for gamers, or board gamers.
That sounds pretty. I mean, again, not to be gender biased, but it sounds like a man cave, right?
it does, and then you get there and you're like, wow, this is actually pretty gender diverse. Yeah. Because a lot of people go there to play certain games that are don't have as much of a stigma or much of a reputation as being just male. So again, Settlers of Catan is a good one. So,
I feel like when we drop this episode, I'm gonna get a bunch of women that are like, "What the hell? What about us?" But dude, guys, I'm like super like welcoming to everybody. Like,
of course. No, Brian, I don't think you have that reputation for being exclusive.
No, I'm pretty inclusive. So when I say things like man cave and stuff, I'm not saying no girls allowed.
No, but that's the impression that.
But
that's the impression
just to use like commonly understood terms.
For sure. So we'll do that sometime. And actually, I have here because I knew this was going to come up at some point during the conversation. I have here 2 decks of cards here for you and your brother, since I know your brother used to play, and he can teach you how to play.
Oh wow! I remember what these things look like now. I remember Dave had so many of these things.
Yeah,
and I was like, "What are you even doing with this?" Can you maybe like just I don't know, randomly pull one out and kind of like tell me, like explain like what this thing is about?
Oh
like
gosh, okay, all right. It's
just out of curiosity.
It's going down.
Well, no, I mean, I'm not saying we're not gonna open up and play a game right now, but I'm just trying to open my eyes a little bit, open the ears for people that are listening at home, or wherever they may be.
So this is something that's very basic in the game.
So I'm gonna look at it really quick.
Yeah.
So this card says swamp.
Yep.
And then below it is like a design, an image of a pretty hellacious looking swamp.
Yep. That is what they're trying to convey.
For lack of a better term.
Yeah.
And then it says something like basic land - swamp, M19 to the right, and then there's a skull below it.
Yep. And so this is the part of the storyline of the game is that the wizards, who are the powerful wizards who are dueling against each other using these spells, need to pull the source of their magic from somewhere.
Okay.
And it actually comes from the land. And so if you are a black mage, a black wizard, you can pull magic from the swamps.
So how do I know that I'm a black wizard, and how do I know that I can pull magic from the swamp?
It's your choice, it depends. Everyone kind of has different styles. Yeah. And there's 5 different colors, 5 different sources of mana, they call it, in this game. So the swamp is one, plains are another, islands are another, forests are another, and the 5th one is mountains.
So you have to like choose to specialize in one, or can you just be like, I want all of it? I'm a rainbow warrior.
Yeah, you can be a rainbow warrior, absolutely. The problem with it is, and again, this is part of the beauty of the design of the game, is that the more colors you play, the less of a chance that you're going to draw the right type of mana to be able to cast your spells. And so let's say you are a rainbow warrior and you have cards of all 5 colors in your deck, but you only have these 2 lands in front of you, plains and a swamp in your hand, and you have a green card, which is cast with force. You can't cast it. If you can't cast spells, you lose, because I'm going to start casting spells.
Just going to kick my ass.
So the more power you try to pack into your deck, the less consistent your deck's going to be. And this is, again, part of the reason why the game survived so long. These fundamental mechanics were built into the game from the very get-go 25 years ago. And those things have not changed. And that is part of the reason why this game has, apparently, if the statistics are to be believed, is played by or has been played by almost 40 million people around the world. Yeah.
That's a couple of commas.
yeah, there's a couple of commas there. And again, the digital platform is without it, we would not be having this conversation. They've done a fantastic job with it.
Nice. Well, I see you shuffling that deck, and like I said, I'm not trying to get into a game right now, but we're on. Yeah. In the future, I want to play that.
Okay.
And Dave, I'm coming for you.
Yes, I hope you guys enjoy. And this brings back some good memories for Dave, and also build some new ones for you.
Yeah, cool. I'm down.
All right.
I just sit there and I think about who I was watching one of those late night talk shows, and this actor, Joe Manganiello, I think, was on. And he was the one that was talking about how he's super into Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
And he's married to Sofia Vergara, right?
Yeah.
And he mentioned how like she was like, "Oh, I want you like something like low key to do, or like take it easy, whatever." and he found a bunch of his Hollywood friends, and he built this like D&D cave in their basement with like horns and like all this other stuff.
Yeah.
And so I just sit there and I go, how cool would it be, like, even with like Magic the Gathering or something like that, to like create like your own little like, you know, arena.
Yeah.
You know, magic cave, right, in the basement of your house. Just like bring the dudes up, bring your friends over.
Yes,
again, bring the friends over.
Bring your friends over. Yeah.
You know, bring a keg or a bottle of booze or whatever, and just like, I don't know, destroy each other.
So certainly some people have, and again, as I mentioned, there are at least 2 stores here in the Seattle area that have very conducive environments for that, and you know. For a lot of people, this is a very exciting thing, especially as I've gotten older. As a kid, you know, I bought cards with the allowance that I had, or that my dad would give me before dropping me off at the card store, that sort of thing, at the comic book shop. But now with a little bit more means, you can do things like really enjoy different aspects of the game. So the original artwork for this stuff will sell for, most pieces sell for a minimum of $1,000, the original artwork. The most expensive pieces just this year have gone for over $30,000, the original artwork, and they're not particularly big. There are certain, you know, they have to be a certain aspect ratio to fit in the cards, but like the original painted oil and canvas artwork goes for a lot of money, because there's a lot of collectors who either grew up with the game or got into it and happen to have money from other sources, typically other sources, that are now into it because they value it that much. And I mentioned, you know, there's some of the cards that are iconic that go back all the way to the beginning of the game and are not produced anymore. You have the, you know, perfect, you know, mint copy of this. I think one went for auction for almost $200,000 this past year.
Wow.
Yeah. So, you know, my job nowadays is partially as an investment analyst. If you look at the gaming industry, especially any company that's involved in digital gaming, they are just printing money.
Oh, I bet.
They print money. And so you can imagine some of those folks who are creating this stuff who've benefited from the profits they've generated, then go and reinvest it in the things that came up for them that inspired them to go into this field to begin with, whether it's in childhood or later on in life. Yeah.
So that's interesting. So that kind of is a nice it's a nice segue into the next piece. So you're talking about the strategy of these games.
Yeah.
Right? You're talking about the investment value of these cards.
Yep.
And you mentioned you do investing as well. So like you're a public investor as well as an angel investor.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
So is there some like overlaps and parallels between, say, like Magic the Gathering and stuff that you're doing now?
So interestingly enough, one of the best players in the history of Magic, it currently runs a hedge fund. His name's John Finkel. He's out of New York. And so he's just recognized as one of the all-time greats, maybe the greatest, maybe number 2, something like that. And there are a lot of skill sets that go together. I have another friend of mine who shall remain unnamed.
Shout out to Guy
that I knew from college, and he currently works and, you know, has a high profile job at an investment bank in New York, and he, you know, we talk Magic from time to time.
Nice,
right? If you like strategy games, it doesn't have to be Magic, it doesn't have to be chess or whatever. A lot of the same concepts of being able to think logically, being able to sequence different events together, being able to project into the future, being able to think in probabilities, that absolutely...
Hedging your bets.
Yeah, 100%. A lot of Magic players play poker as well because the skill sets are completely complementary.
Got it.
If you follow poker, which is much more followed than Magic, you might know some names, and if you dig into them, like these famous poker players, actually, it turns out they're also known in the Magic world too. Yeah, absolutely. So anyways, those things do go together. And so, like I said earlier in the show, I just live inside my head. That's generally where, you know, I tend to go. And as an investor, that's great. It's a pursuit where a lot of thinking tends to be rewarded. A lot of logic tends to be rewarded over time. And I got bit by the investing bug a long time ago. basically my story is I started earning my first paycheck from the Army at the tender age of 22, back when I graduated college, 2005. And at the end of the first pay period, which as all us government servants or former government servants know, it goes from is on the 1st and 15th of every month.
Yep.
At the end of the first pay period, I had money left over. So I'm like, what am I going to do with this money? Right. And I started reading about it and started realizing, oh, I'm supposed to invest it and let it compound over time.
Yep.
So from age 22 to when I retire, whenever that might be, it'll become a lot of money. And slowly but surely I got started with that at age 22. And before I knew it, it became not just something that I did because money was left over, something I was actively seeking to do, something I really liked, something that became a little addictive because it felt good.
Sure, man. Kind of like hitting, kind of like winning at a casino in a sense. I mean, it's different, obviously.
Yeah.
But it's like when you're playing blackjack and they give you 21.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, sweet.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And now I'm at the point where, I am lucky enough to do it as a profession, doing financial planning and also money management as part of a duo at my firm, Triple Summit Advisors. My partner is Wei Wang, who I went to college with.
What's the website?
www.triplesummit.com. And so, we're fortunate, privileged enough, and have the honor of taking care of 120 different clients.
Nice.
For whom we manage over 25 million.
Can you tell me a little bit about the current environment? I guess when it comes to like your company and the stuff that you focus on.
Yeah.
As well as you do some angel stuff as well,
yes.
right? So as far as like the startup environment as well, like,
yeah.
Are you focused primarily in Seattle for either or both of these, or are you pretty open-ended on where you're at?
So I'm not focused on Seattle solely because I happen to be here. I had a meeting yesterday down in Tacoma, for example, and I drove down there and drove back from Kirkland down in Tacoma. And, I'll do that because it happens to be nearby me. But I'll also go and take a meeting in New York or in DC or in Chicago, depending on the need for that.
Yep.
We don't discriminate or close our doors to clients who are out of state. And my partner happens to live in Massachusetts.
Oh, cool.
So we have clients across many states. As far as the environment, and I should clarify that for our business, for Triple Summit Advisors, we do public market investing, not private market investing, because that's the mandate that we have with our clients.
Yes.
So
that's like stocks on the Dow Jones, S&P,
generally,
NASDAQ,
yes.
that kind of stuff.
Generally. We can do some things that are a bit smaller and more obscure, but it depends on the investment strategy.
Yeah, sure.
And of course, financial planning is something that we believe is a cornerstone of any relationship with us, because without having a good plan, your investments aren't going to take you where you want to go. So anyways, that is the Triple Summit side of things. On the angel investing side of things, that's just something I pursue myself. I was in the tech industry for a little bit. My wife works in the tech industry now. Being here in Seattle, and previously I was in the Bay Area for 8 years, you can't get away from it. It's around you all the time.
Pretty thriving startup scene in both places, right?
Yeah, we're recording this in South Lake Union, which is the home of Amazon, and it's
literally a block
us.
away from the new Google offices they're building.
Yeah, so there you go. You cannot get away from it. And so I've been interested in, I can't say I've had any success in it yet, but because these things take a long time, but I've been interested in over the last 2 years finding companies that I can understand, where I think the team is the right team for the right market, and the right product, and where they're small enough where they can take a check from me that still matters to them. If you get too big, then my check doesn't count anymore. And so that's the intersection of those things is what I look for. And that actually precludes a lot of companies, whether I understand them or not. There's a lot of them that I don't, whether it's the right team, the right product, right market.
Just those two things right there is a pretty stringent filter.
Right. And then add on top of that they have to be small enough for them to actually want me to be part of the story.
And that's kind of like, like one of those things where if you find something that's simple or easily understandable,
Yeah.
and if you find a team that's strong,
Yeah.
it's hard to find them at the right point in their
Absolutely.
business cycle before
Absolutely.
they start really taking off.
Absolutely. Yeah. And this is not a problem that I face solely. The largest firms out there.
Oh
face
yeah,
this
yeah,
problem,
yeah, 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 of
right?
course.
If they have $100 million to deploy in a single investment, they still have the problem of how do we find the right investment that wants our money, wants us on the team at the
Yep.
right time that
Yep.
we also believe in.
Yep.
Right. It's a problem that applies throughout, and there's no one who's solved this issue.
Yeah.
Every the most well-known VCs out there still have networks of people just trying to find the right deal.
Well, it's needle in the haystack stuff,
Yeah,
right? Like
yeah.
I remember, like when I was in grad school, when I was in business school, I got my MBA in finance.
Yeah.
And we did some project in one of the classes about like startup investing, VC angel type
Yep,
stuff a little
yep.
bit. So I've got a little bit of knowledge behind it, not a lot of practical experience.
Yep.
But like when I read in school, and God, it was almost 10 years ago. From 2009 to 2011.
Yep.
So just to give you some insight there.
Yep.
At that point, they're looking at what the theory was, kind of cast a wide net
Yeah.
and hope that one or two hit really big.
Yeah. Right.
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 To make up for the losses
That's
of
right.
the other ones.
That's right.
So then I, take that theory, and then over the last 10 years or so, I've been pretty deeply ingrained with startup ecosystems.
Sure.
Whether it's been here, Seattle, not so much. I haven't really been here that long, anyways.
But we met through Bunker Labs,
Right.
right?
No,
Which-
exactly.
yeah,
And that's
so-
in essence,
Yeah.
it's a startup ecosystem.
Right.
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 But I kept myself pretty familiar with the startup area in Boston when I was there.
Right.
New York when I was there.
Right.
I was heavily involved in Beijing.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And the process is all pretty much the same.
Yeah.
In fact, even with what I do now, like as a producer and a storyteller, it's similar, just different, different content.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Right. Various investors, VCs, angels, whatever, Google, right? Startup Grind by Google, that
Yep,
kind of stuff.
Yep.
They try to put out as many networking events, as many accelerators or
Yep.
incubators as
Yep.
they, try to get those things going because
Yep.
they know that people are going to be coming at them like crazy.
Yeah.
Oh, I've got the startup idea. Oh, I've got this one. Oh, this is going to be great. It's going to change the world.
Yeah.
Just like everybody's got this idea that's going to change the world.
Sure.
So they're coming at you.
Yeah, yeah.
Kind of like as a producer, people
Yeah.
are coming at you going, oh my God, I've got to tell the story. I've got to tell the story.
Sure.
It's one thing to like have the idea, but it's another thing to actually be able to put it into a concrete framework,
Yeah.
whether it's like a script or whether it's like a business plan.
Yep.
Right? It's another thing to put it into that concrete framework.
Yep.
It's a whole other ball game to be able to turn that into action.
100%. 100%.
So I think a lot of what those accelerators, incubators, the networking things, the classes where they get presentations on elevator pitches and whatever
Yeah.
else, I think a lot of that is for one, it's a service.
Yep.
Right. So people have an opportunity to kind of network,
Yep.
get some experience in some of the stuff, get
Yep.
some insight into what investors are looking at.
Right.
But on the other end of it, it's a chance for the investors to filter
Oh yeah.
out
100%.
quickly and efficiently.
100%.
Right.
So the most famous accelerator out there, Y Combinator.
YC. Yep.
Yeah. Will have a demo day where their startups in their current cohort and current
Yep.
class will pitch. And when they do that, the investors who attend
Mm-hmm.
know that these companies have been vetted out of the thousands of applications
Right.
they've gotten.
Yep.
Like, these are the best ones that YC has determined, right? And have survived the process.
Right.
And so in doing that, those investors have a lot more confidence that the starting point for their evaluations are already going to be good.
Right.
And time is, we all have 24 hours in a day, right? And so investors, whether big or small, have to allocate their time in a certain way, in a way that they think is going to make the most sense. And so
Yep.
that is a tremendous service that a good accelerator or a good sort of source of warm leads can provide. Yeah.
Yeah, and then even after going through that whole process, that filtration process of finding these companies that they want to invest in, even still, it's a crapshoot.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah,
It's
they're
lucky if they get
well-known.
1 out of 10, 1 out of 100 that really hits.
Yeah.
Probably closer to 1 out of 100, right?
That is absolutely the model in VC and venture investing, and the reason why is because it's so difficult to tell ahead of time. And also, it makes sense that, if you were to buy shares of Coke, let's say, right, Coca-Cola, the risk and return profile is going to be very different from making an angel investment in a company with no revenue.
Right, but like if you were an investor if you were to invest in a company like Coca-Cola, if you want to use I'd like to use a baseball analogy.
Sure,
to this, right?
sure.
So if you invest in a company like Coca-Cola at this stage of the game, you're essentially bunting, hitting singles, right? You're going to get some return, but it's not going to be that much.
Yeah, it depends. It depends 100% on your analysis of the business, where it's going, and the valuation at which you can get an valuation matters. So I'll give you an example of this. Warren Buffett famously bought shares of Coke. I want to say it was late 80s, early 90s was the time frame when he was accumulating it. Despite having been very familiar with Coke for many decades prior to that, he chose to buy it at that time because he saw the economics of the business were fundamentally strong. And Coke in the 90s, despite having already penetrated many markets around the world, was still about to go on another rapid expansion.
That was about the time they were going into China.
Right, exactly.
A bunch of other markets.
And so he saw that and profited handsomely from that. And this is from Coke, a company that's been around at that point for, I think, almost 100 years. And so you can absolutely still make great returns from established companies, but the conditions have to be right.
Yeah, sure.
So it depends on what it is you're looking for. And ultimately, what everyone should be looking for is, how can I get the highest return taking the least amount of risk?
Right. Well, so that's what I'm saying with the Coke example, right? With Coke, maybe he saw that, right? Yeah. But at the very minimum, he's hitting singles.
Right.
So if he's at bat and he goes to swing for a single and it goes over the fence, great.
Right.
Worst case, he's on first base.
Right. So
with the Angel stuff, even though you go through all that filtration process, right? You're still a home run only power hitter guy, right? You're either slugging it over the fence or you're striking out. And as you may be aware with most big home run hitters that have the lower batting average, the higher number of strikeouts. Right. You got to get through those to get to the home run.
I think that analogy is apt. Is quite apt here. Yeah.
Right on, man. How's the startup scene in general? I think we're getting close to the end. I think it feels like a pretty good stopping point. Yeah. But I'm just kind of curious, you're talking about investing a little bit, but what kind of, I guess I'm just curious about the current state of startups. What sort of, sectors are you industry in? Or are you industry? What kind of sectors are you interested in right now? What kind of things do you see? What are the ones that interest you? What are the ones that you think have the areas that have potential? You don't have to get into specific investments, obviously.
That's a great question. And I don't think that thematically about the tech world and the world of innovation. The reason for that is my day job and where I spend the bulk of my effort doesn't necessarily tilt that direction. Again, I'm hoping to hit more than singles, but I don't necessarily need to hit home runs in order to do my day job. Right. So, let's be generous here and say I'm looking for doubles and triples. Yeah, that's right. So
those are all-star MVP caliber players too, right?
Right. And so as a result, I can't say that I know that much about the themes that, let's say AI or robotics or hyper fast transportation, logistics, that sort of thing might be changing the world, or solar, or whatever it might be. Right. I can't say I'm super knowledgeable about those more emerging technologies. What I will say is that for me, I again try to get that intersection of company I understand, team, product, market I like, and the need for me at this level, right? And so I get pitches all the time. I hear from companies all the time. I had just 2 this week, and which is not a lot necessarily for someone who's active in this space, but for me, where it's not my day job, that takes up time, right? And for me, they were both no's. They're just both no's.
How quickly did you make that decision?
So Warren Buffett talks about having the too hard pile, where rather than trying to spend extra hours, extra days trying to solve a puzzle that's too hard for you and outside of your, this is his term too, circle of competence, you just put in the too hard pile. You say, I don't understand this. And
It's going to take too much effort to figure it out.
Yeah. And there's plenty of fish where I'm fishing. Why go fish over there? Let somebody else make that money. And so he talks about this all the time where he's like, okay, they missed out on Netflix, right? They didn't invest in Netflix. And they don't really feel bad about that. I'll just use that as an example. They've never said, him and his partner, Charlie Munger, that we feel bad about missing out on Netflix, even though there's a lot of money to be made there. But they do feel bad about missing out on Google. Why? Because their businesses were paying Google $1, $5, $50 a click, right? So they are like, wow, we're spending tons of money on Google, and we're happy to because we get ROI on this. But they didn't then turn around and say,
Well, they could
we
have
should just buy
doubled up.
shares of Google, right? And so Charlie Munger's in public records about this, saying that, hey, this was well within our circle of competence and we missed it, and that's on us, right? So if it's outside of something I understand, I don't even bother with it. If it's within, if I get an opportunity that I do understand, and I'm like, I really like this, but I don't want to do it for X, Y, or Z reason, then I'm going to beat myself up if I miss out on something that's really big.
So what are some of these areas that are like in your circle of competence that you're like,
sure.
all right, cool.
So my first love in the world of investing is always going to be consumer products and things like that, because it's something I understand very well as a consumer, as someone who's used these things for these sorts of products for all my life. So very generally easy to understand. Going through some major shifts right now with the rise of Amazon reviews and the internet and direct to consumer, as opposed to going through retailers and other distribution channels, but still strong brands are definitely important. So that's always going to be my first love, and always going to be a huge part of how I look at investing and things like that. After that, it's going to be companies that are generally B2B, but that have a product or service that no one else can really replicate. And I'll give you an example of this. And this is not a recommendation to buy anything. This is just an analysis of what I think is compelling about the economics of company.
Like a unique service selling point, USP.
So most people don't even know what this company is, other than that it was involved in the financial crisis somehow. But Moody's, right?
The ratings company.
Right, the ratings agency. So Moody's is an oligopoly with S&P and to some extent Fitch, which is another ratings agency.
But there's not a lot of them anyways. Hence the oligopoly. There's just a couple of them.
Right.
They basically, for the listeners that aren't familiar with this, these ratings agencies, they analyze public, probably private companies too, but they definitely analyze public companies, and they give them like a credit rating or like a buy or sell rating or something along those lines.
A credit rating in this case.
It's the credit rating in this case. And this will determine the types of rates they might get if they need investment.
If they need to borrow money.
If they need to borrow money, right? Like from bonds or things like that.
Right.
And their credibility as far as their ability to pay it back.
Yep. And so if you are a large corporation, you are an Apple, you are a Verizon, you are a Netflix,
sure,
and you want to get a gigantic bond deal done, you have to go through these companies. You don't have a choice.
Yeah.
Because there has to be a rating assigned, because that is how the investors start their analysis for, is this company, what do we charge on this bond deal? What's the rate of interest, right? And other terms and things like that. And so every time someone wants to do a large debt deal, these companies get a cut of it. It's a toll on the road of capitalism, if you will. And that's exactly how Buffett describes it, by the way.
Like the Lord of the Rings, like, you shall not pass.
That's right. That's right. Unless you pay me a small fee, which is only a tiny portion of the deal. But that fee
In the grand
is
scheme of things.
mostly margin, mostly profit for these
Yep.
companies. And you have to go through this toll.
Yep.
And so they have fantastic economics. And again, they're oligopolistic. There are tons of companies that would love to break this oligopoly. But even the financial crisis couldn't bring these companies down, where they had some role to play in misrating these bonds, these subprime bonds and things like that help to bring the economy to its knees, right? So they're back and doing as much business as ever. Buffett, Berkshire Hathaway, Buffett's company, owns a significant portion of Moody's, and he's been long on public record about how fantastic it is as a business. Again, not a recommendation to buy anything, but just an analysis of the economics of the business. So that's the type of stuff I look for. Businesses where there's a product or service that you sell that the customer can't do without. It's better if the customer really, really likes it and really, really wants to pay for it. But even if the customer doesn't really want to pay for it, sometimes it's still a good business.
Well, even utilities can be good investment opportunities, right?
Yeah.
You've got to pay the bills.
Yeah, they can be, and it's just looking for the right combination of growth and price.
Yep.
So yeah.
Interesting. I think at this point, like I said, it's a pretty good natural point to stop.
Yeah, absolutely.
I appreciate your time. This has been really insightful. We've talked about a lot of different things. And I hope people get a little bit out of all of it.
Yeah,
right?
Me too.
Real quick before we go, anything you want to plug? I know you mentioned the website already. Might as well mention that again.
Yeah.
As well as
So
anything else you might want to push there?
absolutely. So two things actually. Well, we didn't touch on this too much, but as I mentioned, you and I met through Bunker Labs.
Yes.
Which is a nonprofit focused on helping veterans and military spouses.
Shout out to Todd Connor.
Yep, the CEO and founder of Bunker Labs. We're a nonprofit that helps veterans and military spouses to start their own businesses or nonprofits, their own organizations. And we're national with chapters in a lot of different cities all around America, including here in Seattle, where I'm a city leader. I'm a volunteer. And if anyone wants to reach out to learn more about Bunker, I'm always open for that. And I'm going to give out my email here in a little bit. So the other thing I want to mention, of course, is my business, which we've already talked about, Triple Summit Advisors. That is my day job. We are at www.triplesummit.com. And you can reach me directly at dan@triplesummit.com.
Nice. Appreciate that. And you're right. We didn't mention Bunker Labs or the Veteran Residence Program too much. I just want to leave a quick blurb about that.
Yep.
But, I was accepted in the Veteran in Residence Program powered by Bunker Labs, which essentially gave me 6 months of free office space, including this makeshift studio that I've set up to begin interviewing some of these guests. So they've done a lot of great things for me. The value that I've gotten out of it so far has been immeasurable. So if there are any other veteran entrepreneurs out there that are, interested in being part of a veteran entrepreneur community, this is a good place to look.
Veterans in Residence Program, which is a WeWork program powered by Bunker Labs.
Great. All right. Again, thanks a lot, Dan. Appreciate it. Everyone give it up for my friend, Dan Kanivas.
Thank you, Brian.
You've been listening to Half the City with Brian Schoenborn, presented by 8B Media. Be sure to subscribe to this podcast, share it with your friends, and leave a solid 5-star review to ensure these stories get spread far and wide. For more information, as well as to listen to other shows, including Relentless, a survivor's search for passion, purpose, and inner peace, and Beyond Relentless, be sure to check out 8bmedia.com. Thank you for listening.